Welcome back to Inside A&M Athletics. I'm Chauncy Sanders, of course, and I'm now sitting alongside the 11th head coach of the men's basketball program, Donte Jackson. Coach, first of all, welcome in. What's the feeling like? What's the temperature?
First off, thanks for having me, Chauncy. Man, temperature is amazing, man. Like I'm excited. I feel a breath of fresh air. I'm ready to get after it.
Ready to get after it. I hear you on that. Coach, this transition for you almost feels seamless now. This is your third time being hired on by a familiar face and a good friend of yours, Dr. Paul A. Bryant. Can you describe the relationship with him? What's it like being with
The
him?
relationship is like it's different. We have a friendship, we have a brotherhood, but he's probably the best mentor I ever had in my life. Like when I have issues and things that I'm not feeling good about, he's somebody I can reach out to and talk to and just have, a common, direction that I know that he's going to be there and he's going to tell me the truth. And sometimes good, bad, or indifferent. We may not want to hear the truth, but, it's great to be there and, him be able to tell me exactly things that he feel.
For sure. And this conversation between you all, when did this start about, getting the ball rolling down the hill about becoming the next head coach?
So the conversation started, I don't know, like maybe last week or something like that. Things happened with Coach Hughley. Unfortunately that happened or whatever the case is. I kind of got a call maybe a day or two afterwards, and it was kind of like, hey, you interested? What's up, bro? And I'm like, man, I'm good, bro. Like, I'm straight. So then he was like, I got you. Then he was like, I'm just letting you know, man, you should apply. Just go through the process. And I was like, man, it's called the AD. Call my AD. He was like, well, all right, we gonna do it right. So, always with him, it's always professionalism. He always does it the right way. So he talked to my AD. My AD was like, man, he called me. I was like, So then it was like, all right, let's have a conversation. We talked a little bit. We talked about some different things that's going on here at the Hill, and I started thinking to myself, like, all right, now this is a real conversation I gotta have with my wife and kids. Like, it's a real conversation. So we started talking a little bit, and we got in depth, and I talked to my wife a little bit more, and I mean, we went all the way to the bottom of the ninth. Like, we went all the way to Wednesday, to try to figure out, like, we gonna do it. He like, I got another candidate, man. So if you ain't gonna do it, you need to let me know. And I'm like, I'm gonna do it. And I was, it felt good. It felt good in my spirit to do it.
For sure. What enticed you about this community, this campus here at Alabama A&M, to make it so attractive to leave a place like Grambling where you have been for years?
Well, I think that it wasn't the fact that, like, it was anything wrong with Grambling or anything of that nature. I felt like I was in a good space at Grambling, so let's just make that very clear. But then, coming here, having my mentor here, having Dr. Wims as a president who loves sports and he wants sports to thrive, being here, and I'm not sure about the research level that just went up another notch, like only HBCUs with this researching type area. It just made it to think to myself, like, man, like, so many good things going on there, and you want to be on the uptick, you want to be on the upswing of things, and I felt like this was a place that we can take things to a whole nother level. And through my conversations with Dr. Bryan, I was like, okay, I'm excited about taking us to another level.
I want to unwind back a little bit, dial back the clock. You were a first-year head coach at Central State. You were a former player. You had won the John Garland Award, Leadership Award, if I'm correct. I did my homework pretty well.
Yeah, you did your homework pretty well.
You've always been known, whether it was at Central, Stillman, Grambling, of course, and now here, as a very well-known leader of men. Where did that start for you?
To be honest, I feel like that started in my childhood. You're the oldest, come from a single parent mom, she working and whatnot, and you gotta make sure your little brothers is cool. When your cousins spend the night, you gotta make sure your little brother and cousins is cool. So you gotta make sure you kind of doing everything. And then it's funny because I had the nickname, Papa Tay growing up. They were like, man, you always acting older or something. They be like, Papa, I'm like, whatever. So, my guys call me Papa Tay or whatever. So it's like, just always kind of had an older spirit, man. And then, I always was around people, who want to see you succeed. And that's why I tell people, surround yourself with people that want the best for you. And, you do that type stuff, it go a long way. So I think that's just kind of where I get that leadership from, because, I always kind of been that, always been that. It's been naturally innate in me.
And when it was in you and you were able to take on that first year, what do you feel like now is the difference between you then and here you are today, standing as a new head coach at Alabama A&M?
15 years of coaching experience. 15 years of coaching experience. The blessing and the curse about being at Central State is that, I played there. I was an assistant coach there. I got the head coaching job. So, I knew it was a lot of, I was comfortable. I cannot, for a lack of a better word, I was just kind of comfortable in what my approach to certain things. And certain things, that I wouldn't let slide now, I let slide then. And you learn as the time go. I got better at this, you get better at this, you get better at this. So, yes, I lost a few games that I never should have lost at Central. You know what I mean? So, as time, went on, I got a chance to go to Stillman. And the things that I learned about myself being a first-time head coach, to when I got to Stillman, I applied them and it made me a better coach.
And so with that being said, that you were at Stillman previously, to return back to the Alabama roots that you just were at not too long ago, how good does it feel to be back in the state and have those connections as well still here?
Man, it feel good, man. I promise you, I lived in McCall, Alabama. One of my, best encounters was my neighbor, Justin Lewis. And to know that I'm only an hour and a half down the road from him, man, I can go, my sons can go back and play with his sons, man. It's, instead of being 5-6 hours, even he coming to SWAC championships and still supporting, man, it's just being here in Alabama, man, it was just a good feeling. And it was a feeling of home. So when I moved from Ohio down to Alabama, like, my wife made some incredible relationships. I made some incredible relationships. So it was just, coming back here was like it wasn't a second thought after we really sat down and discussed everything.
For sure. And now you guys are transitioning here. Another familiar faces with Dr. Bryan and staff. Of course, you'll have a better supporting staff here as well, since you were previously here in Alabama. Now things get easier for you a bit for the SWAC, right? I want to transition to that, no?
No, I don't think things ever get easier. Okay. You got to continue to work. Like, it's not a such thing as easy. Like, no easy roles in here in the SWAC. Night in, night out, it's good competition. So let's not ever think something is easy around here. Is it a little more familiar? Yes, it's a little more familiar, you know what I'm saying? But definitely not easier, because everybody going to keep doing the same thing. They're going to recruit good players. They're going to be ready to compete. The same way we're going to recruit good players and be ready to compete. So, yeah, it's definitely not easy. It's just a little bit more familiar.
And it will be challenging with the recruiting process.
Yes.
I'm glad you touched on that, because recruiting now is much different than what it was back then, for sure. What's your philosophy on recruiting as far as now, the window's already open during the tournament season, and it may feel like to some coaches that they're already behind the 8 ball when it comes to that. What's your philosophy on just recruiting talent, young, old, transfer portal?
It's about best fit, and it's about need. You know what I mean? Depending on, you want to take the fit and you want to take the need. You got to take the guys that you feel like can come here and make a positive difference, or that can come here develop to make a positive difference. So it comes into fit and need and what we want as far as within our program. Like, we're going to recruit freshmen, we're going to recruit sophomores, we're going to recruit transfers, we're going to recruit grad transfers, we're going to recruit, so whatever the need is that I feel for the team, we're going to go and try to assess it and put it, put the best team we can and the best product we can on that court, so we be ready to compete at a high level in the SWAC.
This university and this fan base are dying for a winner. You find yourself in a lot of winning positions, especially recently when you were at Grambling, whether it was winning the SWAC championship or even going further on to that and beating Montana State. How do you take that winning approach and feel like you apply that to the community here?
Well, I take that approach as an everyday approach. I want to win. Like I tell our guys, we want to win today. I don't care if it's the janitor. We're going to treat them like the president. I don't care if it's the old lady crossing the street. We're going to make sure she get there safe. We want to take that approach to, every day. We want to be everyday people. We want to make sure that we have a positive attitude of how things is going. It's how you look at things, and it's how you respond to adversity. So every day, we want to build the right character in our student athletes to be the best version of themselves.
For sure. If you could go back and tell yourself anything as far as what come further from the next 15 years, as that first-year head coach was stepping into the ring, what would you tell him?
Stay with your gut. Don't ever second guess yourself. If that's the way you felt, do it. That's my thing to everything. Whenever I felt like I second guessed myself, it never ended up being the right situation.
Last but not least, the challenges of the SWAC. We touched on it earlier. You're going to have to see guys like Southern, of course. Grambling, I'm sure whoever will fill in next will be still prepared to go on. And of course, on this side of things, you got Alabama State. What's your approach to these rivalries and the conference itself?
My approach to the conference is it's a tough night every night. We got to prepare to win every day. Whether it's Southern, whether it's Grambling, whether it's Alabama State, as you said, like we got to prepare. From Coach Jones at Southern to Coach Matlock at Alabama State. They're going to have their team prepared to win, and we got to come in. We got to, keep the same honor we've been doing, and it goes great with our Bulldog, with us being Bulldogs, I should say. We always talk about feed. We got to feed ourselves. We got to be more focused than the opponent. We got to have more execution than the opponent. We have to have more effort than the opponent. We have more discipline than the opponent. And if we carry those goals throughout everything we do, from the classroom to the court, we'll be able to feed ourselves.
Definitely, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys feed off a lot of this energy here going around the campus. Coach, we appreciate you again, and we can't wait to see what you do in the near future with this program. The 11th men's basketball head coach, Donte Jackson. Thanks again, Coach.
Thank you again, Pastor.
Pleasure.
Pleasure.